welcome to this edition of CBN News Weekend. I'm Charlene Aaron.
And I'm Mark Martin. As the weather warms up, the U.S. Border Patrol is bracing for another mad rush of people trying to cross America's southern border this summer.
And now there's a network of houses to help these immigrants as they make the dangerous journey to the United States. Jennifer Wishon has the story from Central America.
For many Central Americans, their journey to the United States begins on a path like this. Thousands leave their homes hoping to escape a future of poverty, violence, or both. That's why Alejandro's mother left Honduras. She hired a guide known as a coyote to take her and her two small children through Guatemala and Mexico to the U.S. border.
He told me we were going to make a stop here in Guatemala, but he just left me here. He said he was going to run an errand downtown, and he never came back, and he didn't leave me any money.
It was the first time she'd ever been outside of Honduras.
I never imagined this would happen. I only had a bag with clothes for myself and my children and our documents. That's all.
As coyotes prey on people, charging thousands of dollars for the promise of leading them to America, many end up in Heidi's situation. If they're fortunate, they may end up near a place like this. Outside, it looks foreboding, but inside, it's almost like a mirage. Too good to be true.
Some of them have already been robbed, abandoned. They are in need. It is the most basic human need to offer a safe place.
Tejeda is a Catholic priest who runs this immigration house in Guatemala City. Each night, as many as 30 people stay here. They're fed and given a place to sleep. This is a typical room at the immigration house. It has 10 beds. Immigrants are allowed to stay here for about 2 weeks. And at this house, the need is so great, they're hoping to add a third level. All are welcome here, whether on their way to illegally enter the U.S. or the deported, making their way back home. The staff helped Albina Suarez get in touch with her sister after the 23-year-old was caught crossing the border and deported.
The journey here was hard. There was a stretch of desert where we had no water, nothing to eat. From there we got caught and they took us to immigration.
This immigration house is just one in a network across Central America. It's become a necessity, with thousands of people attempting to cross into the U.S. illegally each year. Here, the activities for kids, the food, and a place to wash clothes are nice. But immigrants also get to see the resident psychologist.
My main focus is crisis intervention. How is the person doing? Is this person frustrated? Any traumas because of deportation? Or because something happened along the journey?
Reyes asked the people why they're going to the U.S. Many want to reunite with family there or escape their life here. In Guatemala alone, more than half the population lives in poverty. In addition, nearly half of the nation's children under the age of 5 are chronically malnourished. And with no social safety net and few jobs, many people are willing to risk starving, getting raped, or killed if it means a new start in the U.S.
We tell them and remind them of the risks. Luckily, they are alive, but will they be as fortunate this time? We talk about those things, the advantages and disadvantages of making another attempt.
But she doesn't try to convince them to change their minds. She doesn't urge them to abandon their dream.
The focus here is humanitarian aid for our brothers and sisters who are in dire need and to whom nobody else is offering a safe place to be fed, to be heard, and to regain their strength.
For those deported after living in the shadows of the U.S. for years, they often feel like foreigners in their homelands and have to reestablish ties. At the immigration house, they can get legal advice, help getting their papers in order, even get the medicine they need. Tejeda says he prays the leaders of Central America, Mexico, and the United States will seek humane answers to this exodus while moving past any barriers in their hearts and minds.
Central America and Mexico have become a cemetery for immigrants. This is now a matter of life and death. It is about guaranteeing life. We are human beings. We are not animals. We are not dogs.
After her ordeal, Albina says she's staying put.
I don't plan to go back to the United States. Now, what I'm going to do is work and get ahead in life.
Heidi wants to get a job in Guatemala. She thinks it's safer than Honduras. Then, after she makes some money, she'll try again to get into the U.S.
Thankfully, God has not abandoned me. He has not let go of my hand. In the time I've been here in Guatemala, I have found good people who have helped me with my children, and I thank God for this house.
The folks at the immigration house have a small window of time to prepare people for what's to come or help get their lives in order as they return home. Because once immigrants leave, they typically vanish, never to be heard from again, leaving the staff to pray that the people they helped found their way. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Guatemala City.
Want to stay up to date on the news coming out of Washington? Don't forget you can follow Jennifer on her blog, The Beltway Buzz. You can also follow Jennifer on Facebook and Twitter, handle Jennifer Wishon.
Thousands of migrants from Africa and the Middle East are embarking on a deadly journey every week, crossing the Mediterranean Sea. They come on overcrowded boats from the coasts of Libya and Tunisia, hoping to reach safety and a better future in Europe. Most of them are fleeing war-torn countries where they're facing religious and ethnic persecution. The Italian Coast Guard and the European Union are having a hard time holding people accountable for what has turned into a dangerous human trafficking operation. Just last week, hundreds died when a migrant boat capsized off the coast of Libya. Although some Italians are viewing this migration crisis as a form of invasion, others are showing compassion, and the church in Italy is stepping up to help.
Our evangelical churches are welcoming people that come then to our services and our meetings. And more than that, there is a growing movement of churches and agencies and missionary organizations that are working together to respond to the challenge, because the government alone is not capable of dealing with the massive challenge that we all face. So we welcome migrants and refugees in where they are taken to their centers. We offer them legal assistance. We try to help them in their basic needs. We try to teach them the basics of Italian and English languages, because most of them will not have a knowledge of those languages. We try to be friends, and in doing these things, we hope that God will use these means to show the truth and the mercy of the gospel. We try to evangelize them sensitively, with great care, because most of the migrants come from Muslim countries. They have prejudices. They have many things against the Christians. So we have to be sensitive. But in everything we do, we try to show the face of Christ.
Do you see any similarities between the immigration situations in the Mediterranean and the U.S.? We want to hear what you're thinking. Watch the rest of that exclusive interview on the Newsroom Talk blog, where you can join the discussion in the comments section.
Israelis are celebrating their 67th national birthday and the miracle that led to their independence. Chris Mitchell takes us to the heart of Tel Aviv, where it all started.
Here in Independence Hall on May 14, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the formation of the State of Israel. For the first time in nearly 2,000 years, the Jewish people were a nation once again.
This is where Israel was born. When people come here, they are astonished to see this place. Most of the people that visit here, their first reaction is, this is it? That's all you have here?
Ben-Gurion and his team looked for an inconspicuous place to declare statehood. At the time, Independence Hall, one of the first buildings in Tel Aviv, was an art gallery. During a 1978 renovation, the decision was made to take the building back to its original look at the time of the declaration.
Traveling in Israel will teach you that God has a tendency to perform his best miracles in the most humble places. This place is one of those places.
According to Isaac Dror, who heads education at the Hall, the establishment of Israel shook the world and became a haven for the Jewish people.
How many people prayed for it every day when the Jews said next year in Jerusalem and next year in Jerusalem? That's what they meant.
When Israel declared its independence, dancing filled the streets. But the celebration was short-lived. The very next day, armies of 5 Arab nations invaded the newborn state.
When it comes to the story of the War of Independence, we don't have many answers there. Very hard for us to explain. Call it a miracle, call it whatever you want, but we are here.
130,000 people visit this tiny hall each year to hear about the miracle of Israel, including tourists like this group from Massachusetts.
I didn't expect it to be so moving. My whole life, Israel has always been here. So I think in some ways took it for granted. And now I, felt like I was here that day.
After 2,000 years of wandering and persecution, for Jews to have their own state really has to be a miracle.
Across the street is this monument with a scripture from Jeremiah. Again I will build you, and you shall be rebuilt, O Virgin of Israel. Surrounded by skyscrapers and a new generation visiting the hall, it's testament to God's faithfulness to His promise to build and rebuild the Jewish state and its people. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, at Independence Hall in Tel Aviv, Israel.
Coming up, cancer patients are getting a helping hand with their house cleaning, and it's all for free.
Many cancer patients experience extreme exhaustion from their treatment.
This fatigue is especially difficult for women responsible for running a home. But as Lori Johnson tells us, many of them are getting help with the housework for free.
Despite her ovarian cancer, Stacy Schwinghammer resolved to be strong for her children.
Whatever energy I had, I needed to use to keep their lives normal and consistent with what routines that they were normally used to. And then, of course, when they went to school, back in bed I went and just didn't move until it was time when they got home.
Cancer treatment, especially chemotherapy, drains your energy, sometimes for weeks on end. Many women don't even have the strength to clean their homes.
Now they're getting help. Free maid service once a month for 4 months. An idea that grew from one Dallas cleaning business.
So I did it as a company policy for many, many years. And then fast forward years later, I turned that company policy into a nonprofit. And now we have maid services all over the country that are donating free house cleaning to women with cancer.
Over 1,000 cleaning services from all 50 states are on board.
You know, a lot of times patients don't want to have family clean their home. They don't want to have their best friend come clean their home. And having a stranger sometimes do that is a little bit easier.
So far, 15,000 women have received this gift.
My whole world changed just knowing I could count on them.
Cancer patients or cleaning services that would like to get involved can find a link to the Cleaning for a Reason website at cbnnews.com. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Up next, what's the deal with millennials and marriage?
Hi, everybody. Lori
Find
Johnson
out
here.
When we come back.
Hi, everybody. Lori Johnson here, CBN's health reporter. Listen to this shocking statistic. The number of teenagers smoking e-cigarettes tripled in just 1 year. Now, the number of teens smoking regular cigarettes is down, but contrary to popular belief, these e-cigarettes are not safe, especially for teenagers whose brains are still developing. You can read more about e-cigarettes on my Healthy Living blog on cbnnews.com.
Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. That's our CBN Good News of the Week from John 14:27.
It's interesting here that Jesus told his disciples to not let their hearts be afraid. And many times we think that what we're feeling inside can't be controlled by us. But according to Jesus, that's not true.
If you believe in Jesus Christ, the peace you need to overcome fear is in you because he is in you. And you can choose to reject a troubled and fearful heart and accept a peaceful and courageous one instead.
And no one can do this for you. Only you can let not your heart be troubled. So guard your heart and let God do his thing.
It's a great word.
Amen.
More Americans than ever before are delaying marriage. Research shows marriage used to be the cornerstone of adult life.
It's now become the capstone with more single Americans than ever. And as I found out, Christian singles are finding God has a purpose and a plan for this season in their lives. These men and women gathered at New Life Providence Church in coastal Virginia have three things in common. They are Christian, over the age of 30, and they are all single.
Singleness is a big issue in our culture, and the church is a good place for us to talk about it. We need to talk about it because single people struggle just like married people.
CBN News anchor and author Wendy Griffith recently spoke to the group. She talked candidly about her journey as a single woman and the heartbreak that helped her figure out the kind of love God has in store for her.
One thing I learned that God showed me after the breakup was that I had loved him, but I had not loved myself. When you know your own value, you don't settle for bad behavior.
That lesson turned into a book, You Are a Prize to Be Won. God was able to use it to change Diane Ulrich's life.
The book, I felt like it was what I had just gone through, and it really transitioned me onto a total different path of confidence and standing up for myself.
I just stand in amazement of God, how he can take the worst year of our life, our deepest pain, heartache, and turn it into a blessing to others.
That's exactly what God did for Melissa Dawn Simpkins. She's a successful entrepreneur living in Washington, D.C. And as you can see by the ring on her finger, she is not single. But she says her journey from singleness is something she hopes others can learn from.
I started dating like most single women, in my 20s, and fell in love with a gentleman that I thought was going to be my life partner and that I would marry. And suddenly, when I was 25, he died. He was playing basketball and collapsed. And suddenly I'm dealing with the question of, am I going to find love again? And if so, do I even want to live again?
She says after God healed her from her time of heartbreak and grief, her career as a brand strategist took off. She's worked with big-name clients like NBC All-Star Carmelo Anthony, singer Mary J. Blige, and the list goes on. Her love life was another story.
Before I looked up, it was, 10 years later, and I was still single, had a great career, but I was not married.
Then God told her this.
He showed me, this is who you've become, and allow me to help you move into who you really are.
Simpkins says God knows the big picture and your full potential. So when you wait on him, that's when he can work.
I'm at a party, I'm out socializing, I'm meeting and connecting with people. A guy stops me, he says, you should smile more often. And I'm thinking, I literally bought a shirt that said, make sure you smile because you never know who's gonna fall in love with your smile, because it was reminding me I knew I needed to smile. I was like, I wasn't smiling. So I smiled and said, oh, thank you. And a gentleman was walking by behind the guy that said that to me. And he looked at me and he said, stop talking to him, come talk to me.
Little did she know that man would become her husband. And her entire journey as a single woman would prompt her to create an organization called Women in the Spotlight. It helps women succeed without sacrificing their identity. Melissa believes her happy ending can happen for any single person desiring marriage.
My advice is to step up your faith. And when I say that is to expect God to do more.
When I saw your smile for the first time, my heart jumped.
I said, listen, this is a desire of my heart, and I believe that you put it in my heart. So I don't care if the statistics are not in my favor as an African-American female living in Atlanta. All I need is one. Make them, find them, do what you gotta do. But I just need one.
Like Melissa, Wendy is putting her faith into action and even dedicated her book to her future husband. She urges singles to not lose hope in the waiting.
God is saying, I've got something better for you. I've got my best for you. And so that's what I'm encouraging other women to not settle for crumbs.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Welcome back to CBN News Weekend. The movie Little Boy opens in theaters this weekend, and set in the 1940s, it's the story of a little boy with great faith that his dad will return home alive from serving in World War II. I caught up with 11-year-old Jacob Salvati, a kid whose faith in Jesus Christ helped him take on the title role of this inspiring film. Well, tell us about Pepper, the main character in Little Boy.
Well, Pepper Flint Busby is a 7-8-year-old who is very small for his age, and everybody picks on him except for his dad. His dad is the only one who really spends time with him. And Pepper has the biggest faith and the biggest love out of anyone in the entire world, and his love is centered on his father. And then his father has to go to war, so he's just devastated and tries through all his power, all that he can do to get his dad back through faith.
What would you say would be the main point that you want people to take away from the movie?
I want people to take away from the movie thinking they can be the best of the quality of themselves and thinking they can be the best of themselves.
How have you seen God use this movie already and work through it already?
I've seen that the crew and the cast and just everybody I worked with and everybody who worked with me just became better people. Not because of me, but because God. And I believe that this movie will affect everyone who sees it.
How did this movie affect your faith?
This movie affected my faith through just belief. And I believe that if you have enough faith, you can move a mountain. But it's not you who's moving it, it's God. So put your faith into God.
And taking a look at next week, we make sure to catch the 700 Club on Monday. Paul Strand brings you the exclusive story of Louise Tro, the fiancée of the man who unknowingly brought a deadly virus with him to Texas. Louise was threatened and treated as an outcast because of fears surrounding the Ebola epidemic. And she became an international pariah while mourning the death of her fiancé. But then a church took her and her loved ones in, and the healing began. And so you don't want to miss it on Monday's 700 Club. Well, that's all for this hour of CBN News Weekend.
Yeah, you can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com, and stay up to date with CBN News through Facebook and Twitter.
A great weekend. God bless.